so explicit. Oh, you've been saying all night long that you couldn't wait to get me all alone. What you gon' do to me? Don't talk about it, be about it. Let me see. Let me see.
Yes, 1690 AM The One. We got a special guest in the house. We got Miss. I don't know if she's a. I know she got a last name like a Ford. I don't know if she's on the Ford company or she's one of the first ladies. I don't know. No, she's not that mature. She looks rather young. But her last name is a very famous last name, and she's even putting some more flavor on it. We got a special guest coming up to you, and she's gonna be talking about what she's been doing all over the country, and she's right here, our very own. We'll be right back with you. Chelsea 1690 AM The One. We're going to talk about some important issues. 1690 AM The One.com. Yes, well, you know how we do it. Usually our guests bring their own theme music. I forgot to tell her to bring her own theme music. So she didn't bring her own theme music, but on our station we allow the guests to hang on to the mic, control the mic. So we like to let them introduce themselves with their own adjective, verbs, nouns, or even prepositional phrases. We've been trying to get her here for a while. Been dialoguing. She's always been engaged in the community, and now she's worldwide. Is it worldwide or international?
Worldwide, international, all
yeah,
that.
I like international. Well, worldwide, both of them are synonyms to each other. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let the community know what you're doing now.
All right. Well, I'm Valda Ford. I am the CEO of the Center for Human Diversity, and I've had the opportunity to be involved with programs and projects that help people do better, live better, be less vulnerable, and understand each other.
Okay. Now give me an example of being less vulnerable, because our community has been vulnerable, and even God said, I think Hosea, was it 4-6? I'm getting it wrong, but it said our people destroyed because of lack of knowledge.
Exactly.
And vulnerability is directly aligned with knowledge.
It very frequently can be. Many times our vulnerability comes from the fact that we don't know things. Sometimes we don't know because we don't want to know. Sometimes we don't know because we haven't had the opportunity to know. But number one, we can get out of that cycle of not knowing. We can decide for ourselves that we want to be educated, that we want to know the things that affect our lives, that we want to know about the politics and the policies that affect us. So I've worked with young women who say have gotten pregnant early, 15, 16 years of age. Many times they think that their life is over.
Right.
And I talk to them about the fact that, okay, so something happened that you didn't want to happen. What are you going to do now to make sure it doesn't happen the next time?
Right.
That's the vulnerability part. You can be a willing victim and you can stay right there, or you can determine that my life is in my control and that I'm going to work to make sure that I learn everything I have to in order not to be in this shape as I go forward.
So is your mission empowering young ladies, young women?
My mission is basically to improve communication and therefore improve the way that people live. So it can be with training people in organizations to understand diversity. It can be working in refugee camps and then coming back to work with those agencies that work with refugees to help them understand that if they've been victimized in that community, they don't need to be victimized in our community.
Right.
Where they're supposed to be seeking refuge. I can work with refugees to say that just because you've been beat down for the last 15 years and lived in the worst conditions possible, you don't have to continue that survival mindset here. Now
Right.
You want to look towards the future. How do you want to build things? And lately, I've really been talking to people who just think that all they have to do is work and work and work, and they don't do much for themselves. And I talk about living, laughing, and loving, and learning how to reap the benefits. Once we do those things we're supposed to do, how can you now sit back and relax and not be that example of the person who works 40, 50 years, retires, and dies a week after their retirement? How can you incorporate all the goodness that life has to bring and do it regardless of your financial situation? We can do that. We can do a better job of taking care of ourselves.
Interesting. Now, what's your background? What gave you this innate drive to make people smile?
Well, I think my main challenge came early on as a middle child.
Okay.
Being the middle child of between two sets of aggressive siblings, I very frequently had to keep them from trying to beat me up.
Okay.
So I learned to tell stories and make them laugh. And I didn't even know I was funny. I remember when I came here and I was teaching at Creighton University and trying to do all the things I was supposed to do to be a good academician.
Right.
And one time I forgot all my slides and I just had to speak for 45 minutes off the cuff. And people would say, well, leave your slides alone and just come and make us laugh.
Right.
Because I can give the educational part, but give it in a way that you want to learn it, that you feel good about it. Because when emotion is evoked, that's when the mind gets to working. If you just give people some facts and figures and you don't give them any reason for their hearts to work, and then their hands to work, nothing's going to change. So I love the fact that I was a middle child, had to work hard to get people to pay attention to me, to get them to like me, to get them to do things for me. And I've taken those skills on into the public arena.
Interesting. So you actually analyzed yourself from early childhood, self-hypnosis. Are you a self-therapist also? I mean, are you a therapist? I mean,
my background is nursing. I went into nursing early on, and then I had the opportunity when I was broke after not having any money to go to school. I went away to work in the Middle East for a while.
Okay.
I had the opportunity to work with people from many different countries, from 33 different countries actually, and I found that we communicate very poorly. And sometimes we're too afraid to just do the very simple things in order to get people to understand what we're saying.
Right.
An example is a guy came up to me in Saudi. Now, in Saudi, a woman can't be around men, all those things.
Right.
A guy came up to me in the nurse's station and he said, Valda, I came around last night to knock you up. And, you know, I'm sitting there thinking like, whoa, what are you talking about? You came to knock me up. Being a Southerner, my mother was a Methodist minister, grandfather a Baptist preacher. It was like, how are you going to be coming by to knock me up?
Right.
And that meant from England, where he was from, that simply means I came by and I knocked on your door.
Okay.
But for me, I was embarrassed and blushing and flushed. And luckily, I was willing to say, well, what are you talking about? So from then on, I knew that expression didn't have all the weight that I thought it did, and we were okay.
All right. Hey, I'm going to take a brief break, and we're going to be right back with Miss Ford. This is live radio, but no, actually, I'm going to let you go and take on the mic.
Okay.
You got control of the mic. I'm going to step out in here real quick and talk about what's next for Miss Ford.
I'll talk about it. The thing that's next for me, as I said, in talking about the living, laughing, and loving, we had a lot of people who were not really taking full advantage of their lives. And I would do a talk called Living, Laughing, and Loving. And at the end, many times people would come up to me to say, well, they pretty much had figured out how to decrease some of the work and actually use their vacation time and not give it away every year. What a tragedy is that. But secondly, they thought about, well, now some of them were older and having relationships like their husbands had died or they were divorced. And they were looking at getting into the dating scene. And they would come up to me at the end and say, well, I'm going into dating. I don't know what to do. I'm 40 years old. I'm 50 years old. I'm 60 years old. Mm-hmm. The 40-year-olds, not so much. But the 60-year-olds were like, I don't know anything about dating. I was married since I was 20 years old.
Right.
So what do I do? And I was thinking, I'm not sure that I invited you to come up here to ask me that question.
Right.
But they did, and they felt comfortable with me. So I really started to work with them on understanding that when they're looking at relationships, and let's face it, they were talking about sex ultimately.
Right.
How could they do it in such a way to protect themselves? Because when we hit 50, 60, 70 years of age, we're not thinking we have to worry about anything except just how to date if we don't know how. But the same problems are there. We have here in Omaha, we have the STD epidemic that is not getting any better. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately now 1/4 of all people who are living with HIV are over 50. And the new emerging group of people with HIV and STDs is people over 50. So when they were asking me those questions as a nurse, that was very legitimate because most of them did not understand the issues that might affect them. And even getting away from STDs, just the whole idea of how do you have romance in your life when you're 60, when no one thinks that at 60 you're supposed to have romance in your life?
Well, sure. I don't think that. So hopefully, everything's good. I'm trying to maintain. So hopefully until I die, 80, 90, 100.
Exactly.
But is there a reason why? Because because of Viagra? I mean, people are having sex a lot longer. Is that the reason why you find more the STDs in the older generation?
Well, there's no good study out there to really give me the answers, but this is what I believe based on what I've talked to people about. Mm-hmm. When I grew up, the only problem we had to worry about was pregnancy. Maybe we had to worry about gonorrhea, but if we did, then, you got a shot and you went on about your business. Now we have things like HIV, herpes, and many other viruses that stay with us for life, and that changes the whole dynamic. Mm-hmm. So there are people out there who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who've never had to worry about this because they were monogamous for 40 years.
Right.
Now they're out there. So what is causing the problem? Number one, simple ignorance. Many people do not understand that you cannot tell that a person has an STD by looking at them.
Right.
There's still people telling me, I can tell if a person is clean. No, you can't.
Right.
And it's not about being clean. It's just, unfortunately, that you have an infection or a disease. Mm-hmm. They can't tell. Guys say to me, well, the only time I'm using rubber is on my tires. Well, okay, that's a problem. If you're out there having relationships with someone you don't know, or even if you know them, you haven't tested them, you don't know your own status. Because diseases like HIV can take up to 7 years to really cause enough problems for anyone to go check on that.
Okay.
So you can look fine, be fine, feeling healthy, and 6 or 7 years from now you start to feel bad and you find out you've had HIV for 6 or 7 years. Well, if you've been having relationships all those times, all those people are in a world of hurt potentially. The other thing is that when Viagra does show up, if you have people say a man who's 60, 65 years old, who for one reason or another has had erectile dysfunction for some amount of time, and now his doctor has decided it's safe enough, or he's bought a black market, he's decided he's got the little blue pill, perhaps he goes to the house and his wife is saying, hey, we haven't done this in 10 years and I'm not interested now.
Right.
So what's he going to do? He's going to go somewhere else. He's going to do things that now he's in the place of not being safe because he's not informed.
Right.
So unfortunately, it's a lot of ignorance. As you said, that education, that the lack of education is creating vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And I believe that in the prime of your life, you should be enjoying yourself. You should have romance in your life. You should not be worrying about if you're getting a disease or if you got a disease. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk to people now about how to have that life that is filled with joy and happiness and romance, and not just that back that booty up kind of attitude that's going on around here.
Right.
Because young people tell me things that make my hair curl. If I had more hair, it would curl. But they just make me shudder for them because they're putting themselves in positions that are bad because they think it's necessary to be popular.
Right.
And then they go into depression because they've done these things, and guys are tossing them on away.
Well, I mean, it's like you do a vast of things. You like the female Paul Robeson. With all the hats and all the things that you do in regards to the corporate, but also all the way down to the 15-year-old, 13-year-old, who you're giving advice or direction to. I mean, what are you going to do next? I mean, what are you going to do when you grow up? I mean, it's like this. You've been doing this since what? You say you're a middle child, so you've been doing it all your life.
A long time. When I grow up, I've laughingly said for most of my life that when I grow up, I want to lie on the beach and write Harlequin romances. Well, as it happens, William, you might not believe this, but last year sometime, for reasons I can't even truly fathom, I started writing romances.
Okay.
And so I write romance stories. And now on my new website, sexisnotforsissies.com, I even have romance stories on there.
Okay.
Because I want people to remember what it's like to have romance, not just sex, but the whole thing is the package deal. It's number one, liking the person first.
Right.
It's having them like and respect you. It's that good feeling that you have from just sitting quietly and doing nothing.
Right.
Then you can move to the next thing if you want to, if it's the person, not someone who's just going to come through like a cyclone and knock you down, and then you're going to wonder why were you standing in the path all along.
Right, right.
So now I'm writing romance novels, and I really love it, and I'm doing some audio taping of the stories so that people can listen to them as they drive.
Okay, yeah, for those that's also blind too, for those that disability.
Exactly,
yeah.
For those with the disability, for those who want to be preparing for that romance, because I think there's a dynamic to having a good, fulfilling life that includes romance and
Okay.
sex. And that is one, to have cognitive decision making. You want to make the decision about who, what, when, where, how, and under what circumstances. All this stuff with the 50 Shades of Grey, where everyone is thinking that now you're supposed to get into dominance and submission. It's like, whatever. That's just a fantasy tale. You decide what you want, when you want it, where you want it, under what circumstances, and you don't have to be caught unawares if the moment arises.
Right.
Next, you look at the A in the CARES model that I have. A is for attitude adjustment. They tell me that I'm an African-American woman, I'm of a certain age, I have a certain education, I'm a professional, and therefore there are no men out there for me. Well, I think that's a bunch of garbage, number one.
Right.
But if you buy into that, then you will accept whoever comes along who doesn't care, who has no good intentions for you, and you will just accept that. So change your attitude. You don't have to be the perfect size 8. You can be whatever you want. You can just be proud of it and understand that typically the men in your lives are going to like you just the way they are.
Right.
Just the way you are. They're not going to come there anyway. Then there's the romantic anticipation, to listen to some good stories, to read some things that put you in the mind frame, to get in the mood. And beforehand, you've decided it's the right person. Then that goes to E, which is educated experimentation, not whips and chains and cat o' nine tails like this
Right.
book that's out now, but just understanding that touch, learning how to touch is important. That intimacy is not the act. It's
Right.
about dancing and holding hands and sitting on the beach and just laughing at the same movies together. And then you come to S. So in the CARES model, S means that if you do all that, then you'll have seriously satisfying sex life,
Right.
which is what we all should have. We are primed for it. We're supposed to do it. And somehow when we get to be of age, everyone thinks that we're not supposed to.
Right.
And just like you were saying earlier, there's no reason why we can't have satisfying love lives well into our 80s and 90s. There's no reason why not. And all we have to do is take care of ourselves, be safe, be healthy, be educated, and then we'll be less vulnerable.
Now, how can our listener audience get in contact with you?
Well, the best way to get in touch with me is through my website at sexisnotforsissies.com, www.sexisnotforsissies.com. They can email me at valdaford.com. That's VALDA. At VALDAFORD.com. They can also get me by phone if they would like at 402-212-5424. And they should come to the event.
Yeah. Tell us more about how first I got before the event. How did you come with the website name?
Sex is not for sissies.
Yeah.
Well, just because people kept coming up to me and asking me these questions, and they would say, well, I don't understand why my man wants this. Or some woman might say, I've been with the same guy for 20 years, and sex has been terrible for 20 years. And I say, well, sex is not for sissies. If you're going to have it, then you have to be willing to stand up and ask for what you want,
Right.
demand what you need. But in the meantime, also find out what your partner needs, find out what's going on, keep yourself up, keep yourself happy, make yourself joyful, and then all that will come. It's not just something that's passive.
Right.
We've been taught it's passive. Just sit there, it's going to happen. No. We have to be strong. We have to be educated. It's not for sissies. You have to ask the doctors. The doctors won't ask you. But if you bring up the situation, they'll talk to you about it. But you have to be educated.
Right.
We've just hidden this forever. Our parents were embarrassed when they tried to give us the talk,
Right.
no matter what age, and they're still embarrassed now. That's why we have all these challenges.
Right. Now, you got an event coming up?
I have an event coming up on June the 13th at Scott Conference Center at 6 p.m., and it's called Sex is Not for Sissies. It's the beginning of my world tour, and we're going to have a really good time sitting and talking. People can ask questions. They can be candid. There's a lot of good education there that help lead you on the way to have more love in your life.
Interesting. How can people get tickets, or do they call Scott Center? Or
They can get tickets on the website at
Okay.
www.sexisnotforsissies.com.
Okay, cool. Anything else that you want to discuss or talk about? I know you just came back, from North Carolina? Where you just came back from? East
North
Coast?
Carolina this particular time, yeah. Well, nothing going on.
Were you doing some similar type of workshop out there?
Doing some workshops there, doing a lot of work with young girls who actually are teen moms, trying to help them move to the next level and remind them that sex is not for sissies regardless of the age.
Right.
And I do work all the time on diversity and looking at how we can communicate better. And it's all about communication. Once we educate ourselves, we can learn the things that are important, and then we can take better care of ourselves all around.
So when's your first novel going to be published, since you're doing all this writing?
Well, I actually am going to have something out before the end of the year. I'll have my Sex is Not for Sissies guide to love and life. And I have another book coming out called Don't Touch the Monk, which is about my stories of being in 40 different countries and having some really interesting and sometimes slightly disastrous events because I didn't know enough. And even sometimes when I asked the questions, I didn't get the right answers. But it's taught me that when your heart is in the right place, typically people forgive you.
Right.
I've done some things that, could have been politically disastrous incidents, but they say, oh, Miss Ford or sister, as they might call me, I know that your heart is right. You've been doing good things for us, and we're going to explain to you why you shouldn't do that again.
Right.
So that's coming out too.
Well, that's good to learn about different cultures, so we all be less ignorant, to the causes. So I mean, now my final question. Now, do you put all this stuff in practice that you writing about? I mean,
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Right. I believe that you have to have love in your life, and I got married when I was 17 years old.
Okay.
Why? Who knows? I thought it was a good idea. I think I was kind of running away from home that way, but it was during the Vietnam War, and it seemed like a great idea. I was supporting my country by marrying my man.
Right.
And when you've been in relationships for long terms, whether you stay in them or not, the point is you have to remember that even if there's bad, that you're not bad.
Right.
Even if the situation is bad, it's not necessarily your fault. You need to communicate with your partner about what your needs are, whether it's about what you want for dinner or what you want in the bedroom.
Right.
And I've had to learn that because for many years of my life, I didn't. I was a very passive participant in my life, and I recognized that life was going on without me. So I've decided that I'm going to have love and laughter and joy in my life, and it's my responsibility to work on getting that.
Well, I'm glad that you came through. Make sure that we get some information so we can announce it throughout the week, up until next week. And again, the name of your event and where's this going to happen and the time.
It's called Sex is Not for Sissies. It's at Scott Conference Center. It is at 6 p.m. on June 13th. And for those of you who are listening to this, you can get a discount on the tickets, actually a 30% discount, by logging on to the website and just putting in the code 1690.
Okay. All right. Heck yeah. Maybe can we give away free tickets or something? Have a contest?
Sure, we can.
All right. Well, we're gonna work that out. We appreciate Miss Ford coming. She had to fly in. I mean, private jet and everything. Bush flew her in. That's how top notch the talent is around here. I tell everyone that we have so much talent and skills around here, and if we reinforce each other, then we can get to our destination a lot quicker. So I appreciate all you done, and gon' do.
Yes. Thank you, William.
So you guys, y'all make sure y'all stay locked. 1690 AM, The One. We appreciate you. Love yourself because we love you. Peace.
Very special.